Right, let's take a look at atoms. And this is part of GCSE Chemistry. I'm going to basically do an introductory video to protons, neutrons, and electrons. So in case you don't know what these are, protons, neutrons, and electrons are what makes up an atom. So it's what's inside of an atom. So let's draw a quick diagram of an atom. So these circles, I'll color some of them. So the circled ones are the protons, and the colored in ones are the neutrons. The colors don't really matter, but anyways. And surrounding up the protons, we have electrons. All right? So in the center of our atom diagram, we have protons and neutrons. And surrounding it, we have electrons. So what's in the center over here, this is what's called the nucleus. We all know what a nucleus is, right? It's like the brain of the cell. So atoms, it's the nucleus. It's not really a cell though, so it's not, you know what I mean. So the nucleus is what we call the center of the atom. It's not alive, but you know what I mean. And these atoms are what make up everything, both living and non-living. So our lungs, but also our phones, our buildings, our pens, everything's made up of atoms. So in the center of our atom, we have the protons and neutrons, and surrounding it, in these shells, these circular things are called shells, are the electrons. We often just draw the electrons as crosses because in the future, in coming videos as well, you'll see that we draw electrons as dot and cross diagrams. So in the coming videos, you'll see that. But for now, we'll just draw it as these crosses, and that's what the atom is basically. In the center of it, we have the nucleus, and surrounding it in shells, we have the electrons. I'll cover what these shells and these electrons and the configuration, like how it works in future videos. But for now, I want to focus on protons, neutrons, and electrons, and what they mean. I like to call protons positive protons. Now, I really don't like memorizing stuff, but there's really no other way to just understand this. You can't really understand protons as positive. There's no way to understand it. But there is a way to help the process. Protons begins with pro. Positive begins with po. Right? It kind of sounds similar, right? And they both begin with p. Positive protons. They have a net positive charge. Neutrons, you guessed it, neutrons. This is even easier. Neutrons, neutral. Neutrons. Neutrons have a neutral charge. What do electrons have then? Well, there's only one left. Negative. Well, there's really no way to do this, but you know, it's the last remaining one. Positive protons, neutral neutrons, negative electrons. And throughout in the remainder of this video, I'm going to refer to them as positive protons, neutral neutrons, and negative electrons. Because just using them like this is the best way to just understand and memorize it. Positive protons, neutral neutrons, and negative electrons. So these are the charges of these particles, protons, neutrons, and electrons, which make up the atom. Now, there's more to these particles than just their charges. We also need to know about their masses. So we call them the relative mass. So the relative mass of these positive protons is 1 AMU. You don't really need to know the AMU, but that's just the unit of measurement. So positive protons are 1. Neutral neutrons are also 1. So now you're probably thinking negative electrons are also 1. But negative electrons are just very small. So why is that? Positive protons. So I don't really know why. I'm not a chemist. I'm not a, I don't do this for a living, but positive protons, from my logical guess, my hypothesis would be that because these are positive protons, they're positive, right? So they have a mass that's 1. Neutral neutrons are neutral. So they also have a mass of 1. But negative electrons are negative. So they're below 0. So they have a mass of not negative, but just very small. Now, in more detail, the mass of negative electrons are about 2,000 times smaller than these two. So 2,000 smaller is negative electrons. So, in summary, atoms are made up of protons, neutrons, and electrons. We have the nucleus in the center of the atom, kind of like cells, and it consists of the protons and the neutrons. the positive protons and the positive protons and the neutral neutrons. And surrounding it, we have negative electrons. And they surround the nucleus in what are called shells. Positive protons have a mass of 1. Neutral neutrons have a mass of 1. And negative electrons have a mass of very small, which is roughly 2,000 times smaller than positive protons and neutral neutrons. That's pretty much all you have to know about protons, neutrons, and electrons. And in the next video, I'll explain what ions are. Ions are kind of related to protons, neutrons, and electrons, but it gets a notch higher. So I'll leave that to the next video.